talk about now is administrative function. And obviously the primal administrative function is trying to determine exactly what your department does. Now, why is this important? Okay, you're a fire chief and you're sitting in a meeting and all of a sudden the county administrator or the city manager comes in and says, hey, listen, I just got word we're gonna have to cut the budget. I need you to come up with areas that we can cut from your department, money that we can redistribute to the budget. So now you're saying, oh man, what am I gonna do? I've got to turn around and I've got to cut money from projects. I'm already understaffed and underpaid. What am I going to do? So sometimes you have to turn around and you have to do a strategic analysis of your fire department and see what services are you providing, what areas do you have overlap, and what can you do to consolidate or provide better service. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at what services am I providing? Okay, well, we're a fire department, right? So one of the first services that we're providing, okay, is fire suppression. All right. But we're also a fire rescue. So we're also doing EMS. So I'm also doing emergency services. Okay. And we have a hazmat team. We have a heavy rescue operation. We've got special operations that we do. And we also do inspections, investigations, and we have a public education branch. So we do a little bit of fire prevention. Okay. So I've identified everything that we do. We do a little bit of fire suppression. That's probably our main job, but it's not really what we do the most of. We do a lot of EMS. Okay. We have a fire prevention division, and we also have special operations. And all of that is what we do. Okay, that's the services that we provide. Okay, now look at each of these services, and that tells us what we need to support those services. Now this, you may have more ideas of things that we can add to this. You may have more services that you provide, but this is the basis of what most fire departments in the United States provide. So taking this data and looking at this and saying, these are the areas that I have to be worried about. Well, now I need to know what I need to do to be able to perform those functions. Okay, so we are going to take one of these areas here. Okay, let's take fire suppression. We're going to have to do this with all of the areas, but just for the purpose of this lecture, I want to take one area here. We have fire suppression, okay? So fire suppression branches out into a couple of different areas. First of all, we have structural fire suppression, okay? That's basically fighting fires in buildings, whether it's a commercial building, an industrial building, a residential structure. We also have, in our area, we may have a wildland urban interface, so we may be doing wildland firefighting. Okay? And in our area, we may have industrial commercial that requires special type of firefighting. We may have an airport, for example, okay? So we have special firefightings or specialties. Okay? We may have aircraft firefighting. We may have a shipyard. All right, so we may have to do, we may have to have a fireboat or things like that. Okay? We might have chemicals or industry, which might require special hazards teams such as hazmat and things like that. So we look at this and we say, okay, I have this breakdown. These are the three major areas that I need. Now, this is the service that I'm providing. Now, what do I need to provide those services? Obviously, we need personnel. That's going to be key. And then what else do I need? I need equipment. Now, personnel is recurring. I'm going to have to pay them salaries. They're constantly going to be getting, benefits and things like that. So it's a recurring expense. But equipment, that could be a capital expense, a one-time or expense, or maybe an expense that can be defrayed over a number of years. Voila. Made that happen quick, didn't I? The amazing parlor tricks I can play, right? Okay. Kind of broke it down. Structural, wildland, and specialty type firefighting. So, in these particular areas, we're going to have equipment needs. Now, let's focus specifically right now on apparatus. So we look at this and we say, okay, in structural firefighting, one of the first things I'm going to need pumpers. Okay, put fires out, I'm going to need pumpers. The second thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need probably some kind of light ladder. $75-foot, small ladder operations. I'm talking single-story, 1 and 2, maybe even 3-story residences, commercial, light commercial, things like that. These are not special circumstances. So we can get away with pumpers, light ladders. If I have a rural interface or a rural area, I may need tenders. Okay, pumpers, light ladders, and tenders. Those are my equipment needs in this particular area. So now wildland firefighting. Wildland firefighting, okay, what are my needs there? Well, I'm going to need the equivalent of pumpers in wildland firefighting, and they wildland firefighters call them pumpers, but we're going to, for the purpose here, we're going to call them brush trucks. Okay, probably going to need, nice S, probably going to need tenders. Okay, we may need some specialized equipment like plows, okay, depending on how much of an impact we have. But that's pretty much going to cover what we need in the wildland aspect. Really get into big wildland aspect, we may need aerial apparatus and things like that. But let's stick with a small department, limited access, limited resources. And then our specialty firefighting, all right, we have, say we have a small airport, so we may need a crash truck, or at least a truck capable of deploying foam. We may have a shipyard. We're in a port, we have a small shipyard, or we have a marina, we may need a fireboat. In special considerations, we may have high-rise structures, and definition of a high-rise is a building that exceeds the capability of your highest aerial platform. Well, if we have light ladders here, there are 75-foot or telesquirts or things like that, we may need to consider more heavier duty ladders, more designed for rescue and stuff like that. Industrial and commercial areas, we may see hospitals, which might be multiple story. We may need to perform rescue. So we may need heavy ladders or ladder trucks with heavy capability. And then also, if we have industrial and commercial that requires a hazmat team or special operation, we may need other type of truck companies based on the specialty. I'll put down hazmat, and I think I'm below my paper here, but hazmat and heavy rescue. Okay, so now this is just my apparatus determination of needs. So I started very simple. I looked at my fire department and I said, what services do I provide as a fire department? Then I took each of those services and I looked at each of those services and I said, well, what needs do I have based on those services? And what basically am I going to have to do to provide those services? Now, you get all this stuff out and you say, okay, this is what I need. And they still come back to you and they say, well, we can't give you money for that. We only have this much money, this is what you can buy. Now you have to do a strategic analysis of frequency of use and necessity and what is my risk, okay? So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide.